Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Pewter post-game show, and it's a Pewter post-game show where we're talking about a victory for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and those have been few and far between this season, so you got to enjoy it when you see it. The Bucs defeated the Carolina Panthers narrowly by a margin of 21-18 in what was a historic game once again for Michael Lynn Evans. We'll talk all about his big day and everything else that we saw from Bucs versus Panthers this evening. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me are two of the finest people around when it comes to Tampa Bay Buccaneers media. It is our fellow colleague at PewterReport.com, Josh Capo, who was on with me earlier today, and the face that runs the place at PewterReport.com. He's currently running the place at Raymond James Stadium live after the Bucs and Panthers game. It's Scott Reynolds. Scott, let's start with you. How's the vibe at Raymond James Stadium right now after the Bucs finally won?
It's pretty electric. It was certainly raining and looked a little desperate at times here in a rain-soaked Raymond James Stadium. At the same time, though, Mike Evans energized this crowd, got the Bucs the lead with a diving 75-yard touchdown. Just broke the end zone, hit just over the pylon. The play counted. It was an important touchdown. His next catch would be for 11 yards. That put him over 1,000 yards for a total of 10 seasons to start his career. Mike Evans, if he hadn't punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame yet, certainly that is one more feather in his cap, if you will. And this guy is just, I don't want to say he's getting started, but man, I don't know when he's going to stop. He's 30 years old. He's already got 10 years in the league. He could conceivably do this, I think, for at least 3 more seasons playing at a high level. And hopefully it's in Tampa Bay. I don't know how this team does not re-sign him at this point in time. He is the offense.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers would not be better without him, right? I mean, he is the Buccaneers offense. So
yeah.
To me, you're looking at a guy that if he stays healthy, if he has 3 more 1,000-yard seasons, even if he has, another year or two at age 34, 35, where it's 700 yards, 600 yards, he will be inside the top 10 in terms of receiving yards, ahead of other Hall of Famers. And so to me, this was a monumental game. It was a monumental milestone for Mike Evans. And more importantly, for this year's Buccaneers, a monumental victory, because without this victory, their season is essentially over with the Saints losing today. And Josh, you can talk about where they stand in the division and how it shakes out. It basically boils down to, if the Buccaneers can go up to us, steal that win, and beat the Falcons, they're still very much alive for the NFC South title. However, if they lose to the Falcons, they will be swept by Atlanta, and they would really, really need some holiday miracles here down the stretch to get back in the NFC South race.
Yeah, I've got a few things. So we'll start with the NFC South race, and then I've got some things to add on Evans, if you don't mind there, Scott. So the Bucs are 1 game back of the Falcons. They play in Atlanta next week. If they beat the Falcons, the two will have the same exact overall record. At that point, they will also have the same exact divisional record at 3-1 in their division, because the Falcons are currently 3-0. The Bucs are 2-1. And they'll be 1-1 in head-to-head contests because Atlanta beat the Bucs earlier in the season, and in this scenario, the Bucs would beat Atlanta next week. So we would then go to the third tiebreaker, which would be common games. Now, with both of them being 3-1 in their own division, the common games in the division even out. The other common games these two teams have is Minnesota, where the Bucs have beaten the Vikings. Atlanta lost to the Vikings. Detroit, both teams lost to Detroit, so that one stays even. And then Tennessee, Houston, both teams lost to Houston, and then Tennessee, where the Bucs beat Tennessee. Carolina has lost to Tennessee, so the Bucs would then have the common game tiebreaker. And so with a victory in Atlanta next week, the Bucs would move into first place in the NFC lull. is what I'm calling it. The
Right.
NFC laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Then going to Mike Evans, adding in his targets, catches, yards, and touchdowns from today, he is on pace for 140 targets on this season. That would be his most targets since 2016. 86 catches, most catches since 2021. 1,434 receiving yards, his most since 2018. 14 touchdowns, his most since 2021. And he's averaging 16.6 yards per catch, which is his highest mark since 2019 when Jameis Winston was throwing the ball all over the yard. At 30 years old, I think, Scott, you said it perfectly earlier when you said he's not slowing down.
No. Yeah.
And I'll just say it's the way that Mike plays the game as well. Like, Mike can be a physical guy, but the name of his game is getting open down the field, making the catch, and either getting out of bounds or kind of protecting himself. Right. That's why I almost winced. One of the catches he made over the middle where he almost got socked in the head and then got slammed to the ground.
Yep.
And we've seen before, like, Mike will get tackled like a routine play and then come up and being like, oh, like my whole body. But he was like perfectly fine when he got slammed to the ground. But yeah, his style of play of just kind of getting the better of the cornerback in front of him it makes him a viable option for someone that can play quite successfully into 34 and 35, where maybe other receivers, like even like Chris Godwin, I don't know if he could still be as productive at 34 and 35, the way that Chris Godwin kind of, makes plays over the middle and just his way of playing the game. It's a little bit different. So great for Mike. I mean, so historic. His touchdown that we talked about was the longest touchdown of his career. So there was two pieces of history, the 1,000 yards again, and then the longest touchdown of his career. Really cool to see because, of course, Mike has never really been known as the catch and run type of guy. So
I guess now he's had two of them. He's had a 74-yard catch and run earlier in the season against the Bears, right? And then 74 yards, and then a 75-yard touchdown. So it's like, for him at age 30 to have two catches over 70 yards, and these are yak. I mean, these aren't 50 yards in the air and 20 yards after catch. No, these are like 20 yards in the air, 50 yards after catch. So for him to be doing this at age 30, it's pretty stunning. Trustin Forbeck here with a $4.99 super chat. We appreciate that. So happy for Mike. It's hilarious. Back when I was 15 years old, I was so mad we didn't draft Manziel, and now he is the best offensive Buck ever. Yes, the Buccaneers picked the right Texas A&M Aggie in Mike Evans, not Johnny Manziel. And that was a big question in the 2014 draft. Is who made who? Was it Mike Evans making Johnny Manziel, or was Johnny Manziel's magic and his scrambling ability and the ability just to throw it up to Mike? Who made who? And I think it's pretty clear. Been clear for a long time. Mike made Johnny.
Yeah, and a couple other things with that touchdown today. He's now only one behind Davante Adams and Isaac Bruce for 13th all time. Now, Davante Adams is still active, so he could conceivably push that up. But he is only two behind Rob Gronkowski. I think it's very reasonable to think that Mike Evans could get another 3 touchdowns between now and the end of the season, which would put him in 12th place all time, depending on where Adams is. So that's huge. And I thought it was a little bit of redemption for Mike because, and Matt and I talked about it on the live.
Yeah, this is a great find by you.
That 75-yard touchdown was the exact same route that he ran in Carolina last year when Tom Brady hit him and he dropped the ball. That would have been a 75-yard touchdown, if I remember correctly, because it was complete blown coverage. And so a little bit of a redemption for him against Carolina to then make the catch on the same post route and get downfield and get the touchdown.
Other thing now is, I was just say real quick. So Mike has got 10 touchdowns on the season, right?
Yeah.
And what do we, 5 games left in the season now? Mm-hmm. Right. So his single season touchdown record is 14 that he set in 2021. He's on pace for it. He's on pace to hit 14 and has a chance to, and the Bucs will probably need him to get to 15, to win some of these games down the stretch. But interesting to see Tampa Bay offensively. put touchdowns on the board rather than field goals. That was necessary today, gentlemen.
Yes, it was.
But at the same time, just 21 points. This team is like incrementally making progress over last year's 18.4 yard or points per game, but not by a whole bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's why this is a good point from Bucs Basement, and thank you for the $5 super chat. Who says, "Not jumping for joy, beating a 1-11 team. Bowles' awful coaching was on display. Winfield saved Bowles' job. I think it's time for Trask. Baker was meh." So yeah, for all the exciting things about Mike, and we definitely don't want to take away from that. Yeah. That first half was really, really brutal to watch after the touchdown, and obviously it coincided with the rain falling down. And Scott, you could probably tell us better, like how the atmosphere was, because just watching it on the TV, it was like, wow, it is pouring. It looks absolutely miserable. I felt bad for the fans that were watching, and the offense like really looked porous at times. Like Baker Mayfield, I think had his worst game as a Buccaneer since being named the starting quarterback of the team. I mean, he just had some bad overthrows. The interception when he was looking for Mike was absolutely horrific. But to his credit, he didn't sulk, he didn't slouch, he kept it going, and the offense was able to turn around a little bit in the second half. But I wouldn't necessarily be inspired by a 3-point win over a 1-win team.
Yeah, I mean, it still counts on his football card, right? But the thing is, you look at those 202 yards passing today, and 75 of that was on one play to Mike Evans, which was mostly Mike Evans, right, running with the ball in his hand after, roughly a 20-yard catch or so. So Baker Mayfield threw for 200 yards. Mike Evans had 162 of those yards. He was the offense today, like he has been most of the season, but he really was the offense today. Rachaad White had 3 catches for 22 yards. Trey Palmer, 2 catches for 12 yards. Still the invisible man as the number 3. Devin Tompkins, 1 catch, 4 yards. Chase Edmonds, 1 catch, 2 yards. Chris Godwin, shut out as a receiver today. 3 targets, no catches. He did have 1 drop. Did have a touchdown on his lone carry, a 19-yard end around, which was a perfectly timed play. I really appreciate the end around to Godwin and then the reverse to Trey Palmer that picked up 13 yards. Those are 2 good play calls by Dave Canales in a game that was very uninspiring, I think, from Dave Canales. Some of that was in the first half due to inclement weather for sure, but just not a very imaginative game outside of a couple of those end arounds. And the Buccaneers end up with over 300 yards, but that was due largely to a 30-yard run at the end of the game from Rachaad White that put him at 84. He was at 54 yards before that, so he gets credit for the run, but still kind of a very lackluster offensive game overall. And quite frankly, I mean, we're going to celebrate this win, Pewter people. We're not going to rain on this parade, but at the same time, what was put up there just a second ago in that super chat is correct. This is a 1-11 Carolina Panther team, and Bucs Basement is correct that they beat this team by 3 points, and it really could have gone either way.
Yeah, there were lots of things that didn't look good. Baker didn't look good. I think Dave Canales' play calling at times throughout the game was questionable, 2nd and long runs, which kind of showed that I think overall the offense did not trust themselves, or Canales didn't trust the offense in the rain. Especially when you consider that bad interception. I believe that, the ball just slipped out of Baker's hand for him to throw such a duck. They were committed to the ground game, and ultimately the ground game put up 130 yards, I think it was. And Rachaad White had 8 carries for 50 yards in the second half, plus a big catch and juke and run for 20 yards that helped set up the Godwin touchdown later on in a drive. So White came up big in the second half, and I think the offensive line overall pass protected well. They only allowed 1 sack. It's Tristan Wirfs when he got hurt, right? The ankle injury. So there were positives, but at a certain point this season, and I think you guys will agree, I've been kind of one who continually says there's positives. At a certain point, they got to put it all together, and they just don't they aren't able to. I know the super chat earlier said go for Trask. There's no way the team's going to go for Trask with the potential to take the division lead next week. Like they're just not there from their talk or their standpoint.
Exactly.
And I think the 3-point lead came down to a lot on defense. The pass defense was pretty solid all game long. Carlton Davis had a great game. Antoine Winfield is otherworldly right now.
Yeah.
The 3-point loss comes down to they couldn't stop the run because they literally ran out of linebackers.
Yeah, they really did.
And Ryan Neal, admirable performance stepping into the box and playing out of position. But ultimately, there were a lot of holes created by Carolina in the run game. They were able to keep themselves in the game in the second half. They basically just ran the ball down the Bucs' throat in the rain, with no linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, you see here Todd Bowles, Travasier Dennis, Devin White, right? I mean, they started with KJ Britt and JJ Russell, and it was JJ Russell who played the entire game.
Who had a sack?
Did have a sack, 6 tackles, and actually played pretty credible football. I mean, I think
would agree with
he
that.
did a good job. And Ryan Neal, you have to give him credit. He stepped in, played a position that he literally took a handful of snaps playing during the walkthrough, right? So like that's what it came down to is that he basically did the walkthrough as a linebacker in case they needed him. And, it didn't play that well, but Todd Bowles has ran out of bodies, right? So I think they'll obviously get Sebastian Dennis back next week. See about Devin White, Levante David, Cali Bucs, $9.99. Mike could have demanded a trade earlier in his career. He stuck by the Bucs. Let's give him his flowers. Evan tied Randy Moss in 1,000-yard seasons and is now 1 season behind Jerry Rice, who has 11 1,000
yard.
seasons.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer. So, and just to clarify too, Mike Evans started his career with now 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Nobody's ever done that before.
Yeah.
Jerry Rice, at different stages of his career, different years, accumulated a total of 11 1,000-yard seasons. That's the new record Mike is going after. And with every year that he stacks a 1,000-yard season on from this point out, he's just extending a record that may never be caught, because it takes a certain degree of luck and skill and execution and stick-to-itiveness. But if he was going to get, and hopefully it's in Tampa Bay, another 1,000-yard season, that's 11 straight years with 1,000 yards. And I don't know which wide receiver coming out of college is going to stay healthy and be that productive enough.
That's
for 11 years.
Yeah, the health. Now, Rice did string those 11 together. They just didn't start a career. So he did have 11 consecutive.
Yeah,
it just wasn't.
But not at the start, correct?
Not at the start, yeah. Now, Scott, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you, with your 20-some-odd years of covering the Bucs, where does Mike Evans rank for you in terms of players to cover, and then just on the all-time Rushmore list of Buccaneers?
In my opinion, you have to make the Hall of Fame to be in the Mount Rushmore now, right? Like, that's where it is. Mike is going to be a Hall of Famer, right? He is. When Mike becomes a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, he replaces Leroy Selman as the fourth guy on that list. I think you have Sapp, you have Brooks, you have Barber, and then you have Mike Evans on the Mount Rushmore. And the reason why it's those four and why Leroy gets bumped, it all comes down to the
Super Bowl ring.
The Super Bowl ring, right? It's champions. It's doing it at an elite level. It's getting the recognition of the Hall of Fame. And in Mike's case, going head to head with Leroy Selman. Right? You look at the NFL records, right? I mean, and Leroy was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year back in 1979. That's a very strong, award in his favor. Yeah. Sapp had that in I want to say 99, and Derek Brooks had that in 2002. So Leroy certainly deserving. I'm just saying that you look at everybody who's a Hall of Famer, which ones have rings and which ones don't. At some point in time, Leroy is going to be penalized for not having the ring. Right now, he does have the most sacks in franchise history. I think he beat Sapp by 1, but I mean, Warren Sapp helped this team get to a Super Bowl and win it. And so that trumps Leroy, in my opinion, from Sapp's perspective. Barber, his career is just out of this world. So to me, it's Sapp, Brooks, Barber, and Mike Evans when he gets it and can.
In that order, as a defensive guy, all 3 defenders above Mike?
Well, listen. I'm putting Mike above another defensive player.
I know that's high praise from you.
And he's the greatest offensive player in Bucs history, right? I mean, he's
No
past Mike Allstott in that realm. And I think the next Hall of Famer, possibly after Mike, that's in Tampa Bay, if it's not Simeon Rice, which I don't know that they're going to put another guy from that Super Bowl team in 2002 into the Ring of Honor, or into the Hall of Fame. But the next guy, if he stays healthy, might be Tristan Wirfs, right?
Yeah, agreed.
And then it's like you kind of have that impossible argument, right? Because there's no statistics for an offensive tackle, right? Other than career starts or whatever, right?
Pancake
Pro Bowls. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to me, it's like Tristan's probably in the running for the second best offensive player in franchise history if he continues at this trajectory. Although he's got to get healthy.
Yeah,
he gave up another sack today. I mean, he's playing on a bad ankle, on a thigh bruise. He is beat the hell up right now, but he's out there battling.
And he's still playing well, even though he gave up 1 sack in each of the last 2 games. I mean, that's incredible to still.
Yeah, I didn't think he was getting up after that first time he initially went down, and Luke Edeke even went over because they're best buds and was ready to be the crutch for him. Yeah, and then Tristan went down. I want to say a couple of plays later where the play was off to the right side, and Tristan I saw was down again. I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna have to stop again. But thankfully he was able to finish. But we got another super chat from Bucs Basement. Thank you for this $5 super chat. The NFC lol is right. Why would you want to win? Lose in the wild card round, a mediocre draft pick, keeping the head coach, and first place schedule next season? No, thanks. Yeah, the first place schedule might be the biggest detractor to winning this division because someone in the comments during the show, the game day show,
you're playing the Eagles and the 49ers again, and you're playing the Cowboys.
That's if you get past the Cowboys, who just are scoring 45 points a game. Now, granted, they're better at home than they are on the road, but I think it kind of goes back to what you talked about before, Scott, previously on other shows, that Bowles is going to have to win a playoff game if he's going to keep his job. But I mean, he's just got to worry about winning games first. Again, staving off the pesky Carolina Panthers, only winning by 3. And
so here's the crazy thing, right? We've already seen Frank Reich get fired, and let's say Tampa Bay happens to win the NFC South again for a 3rd straight season, right? Let's say that happens with a 9-8 record. Is that enough progress for the Glazers? Is that truly enough to keep him, especially if they lose that home playoff game for a 2nd straight season? We saw Tony Dungy get fired after a winning record and just couldn't beat the Eagles, right? So if Todd Bowles does not get a home win here in the playoffs, assuming they can win the NFC South again, we're making a lot of assumptions here after a 3-point win over the Panthers here. But let's play this game for a second. Theoretically, the Saints could fire Dennis Allen for not winning the South this year. The Falcons could fire Arthur Smith for not winning the South this year if Tampa Bay ends up winning the division. And yes, the Buccaneers, if Todd Bowles does not win the division, they could fire Todd Bowles after another home playoff loss. So that would mean the NFC South could fire all 4 head coaches this year. How crazy would that be? I don't know that that's ever happened in the NFL where you've had an entire division fire all 4 of its head coaches, let alone 3, right, gentlemen? And it looks like this year you're going to have 3 guys that are probably going to get fired. 2 more are going to be joining Frank Reich, whether it's Todd Bowles and Arthur Smith, or Todd Bowles and Dennis Allen, or Dennis Allen and Arthur Smith. I mean, it's a crazy scenario right here, but the NFC South carnage in the coaching ranks is legit.
It would almost be as crazy as leaving a Power 5 conference team that won their conference championship out of a college football playoff.
Well said, Matt.
See what you did there. Now, the interesting thing there, playing through that thought scenario, is let's say the other 3 NFC teams all fire their head coaches.
Yeah.
Does that play a factor in the Glazers' thinking in one of 2 ways? Number one, we have to keep Bowles because I don't think there's ever been an entire division that fires their head coach. Or does that spur them to action? All of these other teams are probably going to be targeting young, up-and-coming, innovative minds.
Yeah.
We need to jump the shark on that and make sure we get a young, innovative mind and not get left in the dust.
I think it does because, again, the Glazers are doing 2 things. They're looking at Todd Bowles and they want to see 2 things. They want to see improvement. And this is the definition of improvement. That's like the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. That's up to the Glazers to determine what improvement is. And my interpretation of it, I believe it is he has to win the division, and then he's got to win a playoff game here at home for that to truly matter and be considered improvement. Now, the second thing is the Glazers also making a determination. Is this the guy? Is this the guy that can win us a Super Bowl championship? Or is this a guy that is just 8-9, 9-8, winning a really, really bad downtrodden division with other teams that have fired their coaches, that just don't have good quarterback play? Is he just taking advantage of being the best team in the worst division with a so-so team himself? I think the Glazers have to look at that and say, I don't know that maybe Todd Bowles is the guy if he doesn't win a home playoff game. And that may not even be enough. I mean, if they barely beat whoever and then they go on and get waxed by the 49ers or the Eagles or whoever, I mean, it's their team. They get to make the call. And here's the thing, guys. They have recently seen what it looks like to win the Super Bowl with a coach who has the it factor. That's Bruce Arians. This isn't like you forget what it was like with John Gruden winning back in 2002 because, you've had Raheem Morris, and you've had Greg Schiano, you've had Lovie Smith, you've had Dirk Cutter. You forgot what it was like having a good head coach. You forgot what it was like winning the division or being in the playoffs, right? You're just so desperate to get back to, 9 wins or 10. So to me, I think that the fact that Bruce Arians just won a Super Bowl and just showed him what it's like, they have to look at this division and say, if we make the right head coach, we get the right quarterback, we could take advantage of all of the turmoil in this division with our roster, and we can come out ahead. And we can actually, if we press the right buttons, we could be on top of this thing for a couple years to come.
And I think a lot of this will be determined with just how the Bucs, the players, all respond at this tail end of the season. Next week is essentially a playoff game. It's not a playoff game, but it is a playoff game.
Yep.
So how do they respond to that? Do they correct a lot of the mistakes that we still see week in and week out? The first drive of the game is another example of the offense moving the ball quite well, and then Rachaad White got a offensive pass interference penalty, and that ended the drive. Can they correct some of the mistakes that continue to hurt them week in and week out? But let's keep the super chats going. Thank you to Matt K91 for this $5 super chat, who says, Baker wasn't his best today, but I don't understand all the hate that he gets. We didn't sign him to be Tom Brady. D was always going to be the path to wins this year. Yeah, Baker's a very polarizing figure. So I feel like people either love him or hate him. And if he's not playing well, those that do not like Baker Mayfield or maybe just love Kyle Trask will be the first ones to point and say, look, he didn't do this well. He didn't do that well. And there is some degree of truth to it. I mean, Baker was terrible. Maybe not terrible. He was really bad today. He was pretty bad today. at quarterback. And he's been, I would say, solid to average this season. And I think we're learning too that he's going to be a bridge quarterback. He's a stopgap quarterback for, the next guy that's coming in. But does he get too much hate? I don't necessarily know.
Yeah, I don't know, but all I'm going to say is just I think it's time that this team, before they head up to Atlanta, they've got to get some Celsius going, right? Matt, I think that's the key. If you're looking at keys to victory next week, probably starts with grabbing some Celsius and getting some energy, because this is kind of like the make or break game for their season down the stretch here, Matt.
Yeah, and kind of like how the Bucs, if they want to draft a quarterback this year, they will have an option of a number of quarterbacks to choose from, not just one or two. That's kind of what you get with Celsius energy drinks as well, because there's so many awesome flavors, from the Cosmic Vibe, which is one of their newest, to the Sparkling Orange, the Strawberry Lemonade, the Sparkling Watermelon, the Oasis Vibe. All fantastic flavors. There's no sugar. There's no post-energy drink crash or jitters that you might get with another product out there. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, maybe you haven't had one before and you want to try it, go to the store locator on the Celsius website. You punch in your address and it'll tell you the closest geographical location where you can pick up a Celsius energy drink from. It could be your local Walmart, maybe a Target, a 7-Eleven, and health and fitness store. Or maybe you just got to go to your local bodega to pick one up.
Bodega.
And once you go to your bodega and you're like, I want more, I want to get it in bulk, you can get it in bulk. Go to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save. I recommend the variety pack, because variety is the spice of life. Have it sent to your residence whenever you want. You're in charge of it. It could be a week, month, quarterly, yearly. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Make Celsius your number one pick. We got more super chats to get to. Thank you to everyone that is super chatting us right now, starting with Aaron, the $9.99 super chat, who says, call me a crap fan. I don't care. I fear winning a crap division saves Bowles' job. Don't want it. Also, New Orleans now leapfrogs over Tampa Bay in the draft for Jaden Daniels, and they need a quarterback. That'll be my worst nightmare. Well, they gave a big contract to Derek Carr for multiple years. So they are kind of tied to him, at least for the near future. Now, would that stop the Saints from necessarily drafting their quarterback of the future? Well, that's a decision that they have to make. But I wouldn't be worried about that as much as Aaron says here. And
I agree. And I think, too, we'll see how it all shakes out with Jaden Daniels in his draft date. He's a very, very skinny guy. I'm just saying that he's got a very, very frail, kind of thin frame. I love him. Don't get me wrong. But we'll see how all the quarterbacks shake out when it comes to the draft,
Yeah, I think there's going to be, to Tanner James Goff's question here, I think there are going to be some talented quarterbacks available in the second round. Will they be available like mid-second round? The Bucs may have to trade up in the second to grab a few of those, but really the only two consensus guys who are seen as definite first rounders right now are the top two, which are Drake May and Caleb Williams. Everyone else, there's an argument to be made that they may fall to the second round. Now, quarterback need always drives things a little bit higher, but there are question marks surrounding all the guys behind that. JJ McCarthy out of Michigan, Jaden Daniels out of LSU, Bo Nix in Oregon, and Michael Penix Jr. in Washington. All those guys have some sort of warts that may keep teams from using their first round pick on them.
By the way, for those that may be listening to the audio version of the podcast, Tanner James Goff, thank you for the $5 super chat, says, we have to pay Mike, but we also have to have a quarterback for the future. Do you think we can get away with the second round quarterback with a class this deep? Josh, you pretty much hit the nail on the head.
Yep.
I'll just talk about the first part. I cannot see a world where Mike Evans, I can see a world where he doesn't come back to the Bucs, but I don't know how the Bucs don't pretty much try to exhaust every option to get him back. At this point, they should be called the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you have the Buccaneers defense. But when that offense is on the field, they should just be the Tampa Bay Mike Evans, because that's what this team is.
I think you're right. It's the Tampa Bay Mikeneers is really what it is.
The Mikeneers.
They're the Mikeneers. Yeah, I think you're right, man. I really do.
Let's go to 813 Randy. Thank you to Randy for this $9.99 super chat, who says, let's give Coach their credit. We were not great, but Todd Bowles did his job, held it close as he can. Dave is very slow at changing, but he did pick it up. We definitely need help at the secondary.
Yeah, they do need help in the secondary. They did enough to win. Again, we're talking about a team that's a one-win Carolina Panthers team, and I know that on any given Sunday, right? I mean, this is a Panthers team that did beat the Houston Texans, right? So I mean, we have to give them some credit, but probably should have been a wider margin. And we'll see what happens next week. This Atlanta Falcons game is going to be very, very interesting. A win by Tampa Bay not only gives them temporarily the edge for first place in the NFC South, gentlemen, but it gives them momentum. Mm-hmm. This would be back-to-back wins, something this franchise has not had since weeks 2 and 3. Right? Is that right?
Now, I'm glad.
Yeah.
It was 1 and 2.
1 and 2. 1 and 2. Yeah.
Minnesota and Chicago.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, Scott, I'm not down in Tampa. I don't get to go to the press conferences. I need you guys to help me out this week. I need one of you to ask Bowles if he's worried if this win is going to snowball.
He'd give an interesting response to that one. We got Trustin Vorbeck with a $9.99 super chat. Thank you, Trustin, who says, say the best case scenario happens. We sneak out in the sloppy division and win. Then we will play Dallas or Philly and get stomped. Is Todd Bowles being slightly selfish, wanting this to keep his job? Is he being selfish because he doesn't want to get fired?
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. I think that's reasonable for any person to not want to get fired from their job.
So, Trustin, are you saying that Todd should take the hit for the team and be like, listen, we're only going to get better if I'm out of the way. So I gotta do my part and sabotage the team so we can get me out of town. Yeah, I mean, Todd obviously wants to win. He wants to be a head coach. He understands that this is probably his last head coaching gig.
Yeah.
If he gets fired again after 2 failed tries in 2 different areas, it's sadly probably going to be the last time that he ever is a head coach. So he's got to take full advantage of it.
That's right. And a guy who's kind of like on his last leg is Baker Mayfield in terms of being a starting quarterback in this league. This is his last shot and didn't play very well today. We've got a $5 super chat here from
Furu Kawab.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Furu. Says Baker looked like he was late on all of his throws outside the numbers. Panthers were real close to jumping those routes and taking back for pick 6.
Yep. Yeah, they were. And it was not a great game for Baker. He did have the 1 interception on a terrible throw. Could have had other balls that were picked off. So I think he was fortunate there that he only had the 1 pass that was intercepted by Xavier Woods there, just on duck. I think Mike was probably ticked that he didn't play defensive back well enough on that play. But,
he did in the Pro Bowl before, so he's used to playing defensive back.
Yeah, and he's actually played defensive back in a couple of games early in his career. He was put in there on Hail Mary defense because of his ability to jump up and get the ball. So he hasn't done that in several years, but he did play some defensive snaps earlier in his career. Thank you for that $5 super chat there, Faru. Cody Malk finally made an impact by taking Brian Burns out of the game. That's right. That's kind of crazy, right?
Very Ryan Jensen-esque.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it took a punch from Brian Burns and got ejected. Boy, for a guy who really is probably the best player on the Panthers defense, right? I mean, Derek Brown's good, but Brian Burns is kind of that difference maker. Man, for him to be ejected in the third quarter?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite a blow right there for a team that's not very talented to begin with. To lose perhaps their most talented player, period. That's just that was a big blow. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because that really was a big play in this game that kind of went unnoticed.
I also, what I don't get either is, like, I understand if you play for such a bad team and you're a great player, you might want to get ejected. Like in the NBA, it's easier just to get ejected and like that's it. It's not a big deal. But the way that like the weather was horrible, I think by the time he got ejected, the weather had cleared up. I could be wrong, but
right. No, you're right.
If anything, you want to get kicked out while it's raining, so you're not like standing outside and it's pouring the whole time. Like he stood there the whole time in the rain and played through it, and then finally the weather got better, and that's when he was out.
So here, this is an observation I made. I was talking with Bailey Adams and Adam Slavon up in the press box, right? So Servassier Dennis this week was sick, missed all the practices. Okay?
I was thinking about this too.
And yet here's Todd Bowles, right? Who is, kind of a father figure type coach. He's a dad himself, right? Yeah. So here's Servassier Dennis on the sidelines in the game right now. He's healthier, right? He was healthy enough to be on the sidelines, but not healthy enough to dress because he was sick. But he's asked to stand on the sidelines during a torrential downpour.
Yeah.
It's like, Todd, what are you doing? This guy's been sick. You want him to get another cold, right? So his immune system's been compromised this week. I don't know. It was a funny visual when I saw this picture from Cliff Welch, our photographer, come up. Because I'm like, man, there's Servassier right there recovering from his cold and his sickness this week. And here he is out there potentially having his immune system compromised by, some inclement weather again. So I don't know, just interesting. But Meets McGee, $5 super chat. Baker is awful at reading his progressions. It's 2 reads, then panic. He's a potential career backup. His skittishness reminds me of Jeff Garcia a lot, former Buccaneer quarterback who was vertically challenged as well, 6 foot, 6'1", and really kind of when the constructed passing lanes are closed, his reads are taken away by coverage, whatever, and he can't see, there is a level of panic that sets in, and Jeff Garcia was kind of the same way.
Sure. I don't think he's a career backup. I mean, he is absolutely one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. The big question that is debated among Bucs world is whether Baker Mayfield is, first of all, he was an absolute bargain for $4 million this year. Yeah. He's played better than Derek Carr. He's played better than any other free agent signing. Okay. He's been a top 20 quarterback in the NFL this year. It really comes down to what is Baker as far as the potential for the future and whether that potential will come with the Bucs. He should get a starting level contract next year. I've started to do some preliminary looks, and it's probably going to be somewhere between $20 and $25 million a year, and somewhere between 2 and 3 years. Yeah. Do the Bucs want to make that investment? Because that's a much different investment than a 1 year, $4 million pact. Yeah, that's where it comes down to. He's not a backup. He's absolutely not a backup in the NFL. He is somewhere between 18 and 24. He's a starter. Yeah. Can he get the Bucs to an NFC championship game or a Super Bowl or a ring? I think most would say no. Yeah. But he's certainly capable of getting them to the playoffs. They're 1 game out of being a playoff team. So, yeah.
If you took the under on passing yards for Baker Mayfield, you would have won some money over at Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code Pewter at Underdog Fantasy, PEWTER, and get a first deposit bonus when you sign up. Their app is so much fun with all the great different games they have. The Pick'ems is obviously ones that we pay attention to a lot. You pick between 2 and 5 players, win up to 20 times your money. You just got to pick 1 player on at least 2 different teams. So if you're watching Bucs Panthers, you could pick at least 1 from the Bucs and 1 from the Panthers and keep going. And you just bet on a number of different stats, whether it's rushing yards on a player or passing touchdowns. It's a great time. They have it for all different sports as well. They got in-season tournaments, the rivals, and obviously we are big fans of the Pick'em. So check out Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code Pewter, PEWTER, for a first deposit bonus over at Underdog Fantasy. Let's get back to those. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Let's get back to those super chats. Another one from Furu Kawab. Thanks again for this $5 super chat.
Oh, boy.
As much as us Bucs fans have been complaining about our offense, well, get ready for the next Thursday night football game. Pats versus the Steelers. Woof. Well, at least the Steelers are trying to get better on offense.
Yeah, but they're going to be without Pickett.
Yeah. Well, Mitch Trubisky beat the Bucs, right? So.
Yeah, and this is the New England Patriots team that scored 0 points today against the LA Chargers. I actually had the Chargers at 5.5.
So did I.
And so, I cashed that today. I had a very, very good day with prop bets as well. Over at my bookie, I hit Rachaad White first to score a touchdown. I hit Mike Evans, the over. So I had a great college football weekend and capped it off with several wins today, including the Chargers beating the Patriots. But yeah, man, that's criminal. When you score 0 points in the NFL.
After you made a quarterback change too. Like they moved to Bailey Zappi, having him as the QB. And clearly did not work. So Patriots will certainly be in the business of getting a new quarterback next season. At least if I were them, I would. Trustin Vorbeck with another super chat. This one's $9.99. Thanks, Trustin. Says this was part 2 because this will kill our shot at a top 10 pick. Love you guys and your coverage. Thank you so much, Trustin. P.S. Off topic. Is Russell Gage going to be able to come back and possibly be a number 3 next year?
No.
Here's the thing. Right now, I think the Buccaneers are picking 11th, depending on what happens with the Packers tonight. They'll pick either 10th or 11th. So by winning today, they only slid from 7 back to 10, which is where they were last week before the loss to the Colts. So they're either going to be 10th or 11th, depending on what happens with the Packers game tonight. As for Russell Gage, I think they're moving on from Russell. He has not been healthy, and injuries are not typically a player's fault. But they've really kind of been snake bit twice with this guy who was healthy in his career with the Panthers. But they've seen what a not healthy Russell Gage did for them, because he's not big, he's not fast, he has good separation quickness, but the hamstring injury back in 2022 robbed him of the ability to separate. And then he has the knee injury in training camp. So I think at his salary, which they already asked him to take it from $10 million to $7 million, I think they're definitely going to move on from Russell Gage.
Yeah. I think the other thing to consider, and I completely understand, and I acknowledge, the higher your draft pick, the more likely you are to pick a difference maker. The Bucs and Jason Light has made several picks throughout his career as GM past number 10 for force multiplier, amazing players. So yes, he got Mike Evans, 5th overall, but Tristan Wirfs was in the teens. Kalijah Cansey looks very, very good in the teens. Yeah. So it's not that a top 10 pick guarantees you a franchise savior, and picking outside of the top 10 doesn't mean you absolutely won't get somebody who can make a huge difference. So
that's right.
Yes, it's good to have a higher pick. You have a larger pool to pick from, but it's not so cut and dry that, you don't have a top 10 pick, you're not going to get. Patrick Mahomes was taken in outside of pick 10.
Yeah.
So
I think he was 10, and then Josh Allen was picked 7th. So, you're talking Lamar Jackson was picked 32nd, right? So you're talking about three quarterbacks that have been mentioned as, and of course, Mahomes and Lamar have won the MVP, but Josh Allen's been in that conversation when he's been playing well, and certainly a multi-year Pro Bowl quarterback. And these guys were not drafted number 1 or 2, right? They're not Trey Lance, they're not Justin Fields, they're not Mitch Trubisky, they're not Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston, right? Those were all guys drafted 1 or 2.
Yep.
So sometimes be careful what you wish for getting a number 1 or number 2 pick and drafting a quarterback. It doesn't always work out well. Sometimes you get a Joe Burrow, sometimes you get a Jameis Winston.
And I think Light, if he identifies a guy that he thinks is that franchise quarterback, the Bucs have the resources in almost every situation outside of May and Williams to make that happen.
Yeah.
You know, the pick that they slot into based on where they end up in the standings does not mean it's the pick that they have to pick at. You can trade up.
Carolina Panthers did that.
Exactly.
Number one. You know, you get Bryce Young.
Yeah. Now they don't have a pick for next season. Damn. Last thing I'll just say about Russell Gage real quick. I do wonder if he was healthy, how he would look or how he would help the team in this year's offense, where we've talked about Trey Palmer.
He just hasn't come around.
Not being there
just has not stepped up and made the plays. And
Tompkins is very sporadic too. You know, like he's more valuable as a punt returner right now on this team than what he's done at wide receiver. Yeah. But
I mean, I think Russell Gage, he did have 5 touchdowns last year. You know, I mean, he was kind of a possession receiver, but he would be better than what we've seen so far from Russell Gage. I'm sorry, from Trey Palmer.
Can I take a small victory lap on that? Because I've been the Russell Gage standard bearer since last year. And then in the preseason, when the Trey Palmer hype got too big, he
beat Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, they're gonna miss Gage. Palmer looks good, but he's still a 5th or 6th rounder, I think it was.
6th rounder, yeah.
And I do believe Trey Palmer is actually a solid number 3 overall, but he's still a rookie learning, and that's the big thing. Yeah. The future prospects on Trey Palmer are bright. I will 100% say that.
Oh yeah, I think he's got a bright future. It just the production
for this year,
week in week out, is just not there. You know where it needs to be, and I think Russell Gage as a veteran would be more productive. You know,
1,000%.
Let's
super
keep
chat
the super chats moving. Yeah, Meets McGee, thanks for the $2 super chat. Josh and I were actually talking about this earlier on the live stream. Did you guys notice Panthers number 66, Jensen? Oh my God, yeah, Josh called it out like almost right away. Very funny, also kind of sad because it makes you think about Ryan Jensen and how he's not playing for the Bucs. But yeah, it definitely did take note of it. Eric Moreno, thanks for the $5 super chat, says, do you think Levante will play next week? Devin White and Jamel Dean, so pretty much everyone that was out.
Too early to tell.
Too early. Yeah, too early to tell. We'll see how they practice. I think Servassier Dennis certainly is in play for next week because he's over his illness.
Yeah,
unless he caught a cold today.
He would be the most likely unless he got
that's a great question for a Thursday podcast.
Yes, 100%. Callie Bucks, thanks for the $4.99 super chat. Says Jason Light posted an Instagram pic saying Mike is him. All comments are telling Jason to pay him. Should have paid Evans while we could. His price tag is going up.
I don't know. We'll see where it ends up. The one thing you have to understand is Mike will be 31 before the start of next season. Turns 31 in August. And there is, like, you look at all of these top receiver contracts, the Cooper Kupp deal, you know, the Devontae Adams, all these contracts that are paid where they're over $20 million, $25 million, et cetera. Those contracts were signed before the receiver turned 30. So there is yet to be a receiver that has received over $20 million at the age of 31, which is what Mike will be next year. So it's uncharted territory. At some point in time, you start to fall off. You start to have some of those injuries. I'll just remind you, the Blazers paid top dollar for Shaq Barrett. And, you know, he tears his Achilles at age 29, right? Or actually was 30, towards Achilles at age 30. And Ryan Jensen at age 32, you know, he got hurt. So there is a little bit of trepidation there. We'll see what Mike's final number ends up being. I think he comes back to Tampa Bay. I don't have any there's no definitive, source that's going to happen. But Jason Light, listen, this is his first draft pick ever as a general manager. They have got a fantastic relationship in history. It's going to be Mike's going to go out and test the free agent market. He's going to get a number. They'll bring it to the Buccaneers. They'll either match it or they'll say, hey, yeah, Chicago's paying you $25 million when you include the state income tax in the state of Illinois, which is through the roof. Our $22 million, hypothetically speaking, is actually the same, right? So like they're going to play that game. And with every catch and touchdown, I think Mike Evans' chances of staying in Tampa Bay are pretty strong. Now, whether you are living in Tampa Bay or you're moving to Tampa or the state of Florida or you're moving around the state, you're going to want this guy signed and on your roster. That's Eric Gross from the Eric Gross Group. That's right. When it comes to real estate, it's the same thing as trying to win a football game. It takes the total team effort. That's where the Eric Gross Group comes into play. They're the official real estate agent and agency of Pewter Report. The Eric Gross Group's done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market. They've got experience in all sorts of situations. You probably know by now, Eric is an avid Tampa Bay fan. He's a Tampa native. He's a Pewter Report reader. He's texted me during the game with venting just like you Pewter people. So he feels you. He gets you. He's one of you. So when you're looking for a real estate agent, this is a guy who's going to treat you not like a client or a transaction, but really as a lifelong friend. That's the type of relationship Eric's looking for. He's a great guy. Don't let the stress of buying or selling a home keep you out of the game. Go check out the website, housesinfla.com. That's housesinfla.com, or give Eric a call, 513-907-4271. Visit him on Facebook or Instagram at Eric Gross Group. No matter where you are on your home ownership journey, you're going to feel welcome with the Eric Group, the official real estate agency of Pewter Report.
Here, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to say one last thing on the Mike Evans contract.
Yeah.
It's important to understand. He asked for that extension right at the beginning of preseason, right? Or training camp or whatever.
Off season, yeah. Right.
Yeah. Or it at least became very public at that point. The Bucs could have extended him and saved some cap in 2023. But at that stage of free agency, what were they going to spend it on?
Yeah.
You don't have any players out there that you would be able to use those savings. And yes, his price tag based on his production this year has gone up. He was asking for 28. I still don't think he's going to get like that Cooper Cup deal, which is like 28.
I don't think he will either. Yeah.
I think, Scott, you and I had some conversations when it first happened, and we pegged it around 22.5 would be kind of the value that he had this year. Maybe that moves him up to 25 or 26. So the Bucs, it may have cost them $3 to $4 million a year extra. But here's where not signing him in the preseason or in training camp actually can help the Bucs going forward. If they had signed the deal then, they would have saved on the cap in 2023, but had a very large cap number in 2024. By waiting, what they've done is they're paying out a lot of cash this year. They're taking down some of his cap number from this contract, and they'll be able to rework a new deal if they do sign him this offseason.
Lower that cap value next year.
The 2024 cap number will be much smaller, and that's in an offseason where they're going to have a lot more money to work with to create a better on-field product. So it still could actually very much work out in every party's advantage, both Mike and the team.
I agree.
By having waited the year.
I agree. We got a final super chat here from Nicola. $4.99. CBS put on a chart that showed rookie quarterbacks taken in the first round, and none of them were that successful. Is it really the answer? We'll see. We got a long way to go before the draft. Up next is the Bucs and the Falcons, and want to find out where the coverage is leading up to that game. Well, there's one place to turn. Matt Matera, where is that place?
That, of course, is to follow us on all of our social media at Pewter Report. You can find us on X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. And, of course, our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. We got the podcast 4 times a week, the live game day stream, Pewter Picks and Props, Pewter Pulse that Scott does, tons and tons of videos from, practice and press conferences and everything else in between. Josh does an insanely fantastic job with a lot of film breakdown and things of that nature, which are super fun to watch and, very informative as well for someone maybe that's like trying to get into the game more and see it like another side of things. So, that's all of our social media. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a comment as well. That helps.
Yeah, it helps
really grow our audience. And tomorrow, it's going to be Victory Monday.
We're
going to have a Victory Monday for the first time in a couple of weeks. So very much looking forward to that as well. That's going to do it for us tonight. For Josh Capo, for Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Oh.